There are two things needful in a person in order to these strong resolutions. There must be a sense of the great importance and necessity of the mercy sought, and there must also be a sense of opportunity to obtain it, or the encouragement there is to seek it. The strength of resolution depends on the sense which God gives to the heart of these things. Persons without such a sense may seem to themselves to take up resolutions. They may, as it were, force a promise to themselves, and say within themselves, "I will seek as long as I live. I will not give up till I obtain," when they do not but deceive themselves. Their hearts are not in it, neither do they indeed take up any such resolution as they seem to themselves to do. It is the resolution of the mouth more than of the heart. Their hearts are not strongly bent to fulfill what their mouth says. The firmness of resolution lies in the fullness of the disposition of the heart to do what is resolved to be done. Those who are pressing into the kingdom of God have a disposition of heart to do everything that is required and that lies in their power to do, and to continue in it. They have not only earnestness, but steadiness of resolution. They do not seek with a wavering, unsteady heart, by turns or fits, being off and on, but it is the constant bent of the soul, if possible, to obtain the kingdom of God. Number 3. By pressing into the kingdom of God is signified greatness of endeavor. It is expressed in Ecclesiastes 9:10 by doing what our hand finds to do with our might. And this is the natural and necessary consequence of the two forementioned things. Where there is strength of desire and firmness of resolution, there will be answerable endeavors. Persons thus engaged in their hearts will strive to enter in at the strait gate, and will be violent for heaven. Their practice will be agreeable to the counsel of the wise man in Proverbs 2 at the beginning. Quote, "My son, if thou wilt receive my words, and hide my commandments with thee, so that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom, and apply thine heart to understanding. Yea, if thou criest after knowledge, and liftest up thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest her as silver, and searchest for her as for hid treasures, then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord, and find the knowledge of God." End quote. Here the earnestness of desire and strength of resolution is signified by inclining the ear to wisdom, and applying the heart to understanding. And the greatness of endeavor is denoted by crying after knowledge, and lifting up the voice for understanding, seeking her as silver, and searching for her as for hid treasures. Such desires and resolutions, and such endeavors, go together. Number 4. Pressing into the kingdom of God denotes an engagedness and earnestness that is directly about that business of getting into the kingdom of God. Persons may be in very great exercise and distress of mind, and that about the condition of their souls. Their thoughts and cares may be greatly engaged and taken up about things of a spiritual nature, and yet not be pressing into the kingdom of God, nor towards it. The exercise of their minds is not directly about the work of seeking salvation in a diligent attendance on the means that God hath appointed in order to it, but something else that is beside their business. It may be about God's decrees and secret purposes, prying into them, searching for signs whereby they may determine, or at least conjecture, what they are before God makes them known by their accomplishment. They distress their minds with fears that they be not elected, or that they have committed the unpardonable sin, or that their day is past, and that God has given them up to judicial and final hardness, and never intends to show them mercy, and therefore that it is in vain for them to seek salvation. Or they entangle themselves about the doctrine of original sin, and other mysterious doctrines of religion that are above their comprehension. Many persons that seem to be in great distress about a future eternal state get much into a way of perplexing themselves with such things as these. When it is so, let them be never so much concerned and engaged in their minds, they cannot be said to be pressing towards the kingdom of God, because their exercise is not in their work, but rather that which tends to hinder them in their work. If they are violent, They are only working violently to entangle themselves and lay blocks in their own way. Their pressure is not forwards. Instead of getting along, they do but lose their time, and worse than merely lose it. Instead of fighting with the giants that stand in the way to keep them out of Canaan, they spend their time and strength in conflicting with shadows that appear by the wayside. Hence we are not to judge of the hopefulness of the way that persons are in, or of the probability of their success in seeking salvation, only by the greatness of the concern and distress that they are in. For many persons have needless distresses that they had much better be without. It is thus very often with persons overrun with the distemper of melancholy, whence the adversary of souls is wont to take great advantage. But then are persons in the most likely way to obtain the kingdom of heaven, when the intent of their minds and the engagedness of their spirits is about their proper work and business, and all the bent of their souls is to attend on God's means, and to do what He commands and directs them to. The Apostle tells us, 1 Corinthians 9:26, that he did not fight as those that beat the air. Our time is short enough. We had not need to spend it in that which is nothing to the purpose. There are real difficulties and enemies enough for persons to encounter, to employ all their strength. They had not need to waste it in fighting with phantoms. Number 5. By pressing into the kingdom of God is denoted a breaking through opposition and difficulties. There is in the expression a plain intimation of difficulty. If there were no opposition, but the way was all clear and open, there would be no need of pressing to get along. They, therefore, that are pressing into the kingdom of God go on with such engagedness that they break through the difficulties that are in their way. They are so set for salvation that those things by which others are discouraged and stopped and turned back do not stop them, but they press through them. Persons ought to be so resolved for heaven that if by any means they can obtain, they will obtain. Whether those means be difficult or easy, cross or agreeable, if they are requisite means of salvation, they should be complied with. When anything is presented to be done, the question should not be, is it easy or hard? Is it agreeable to my carnal inclinations or interest or against them? But is it a required means of my obtaining an interest in Jesus Christ and eternal salvation? Thus the Apostle, Philippians 3:11, if by any means I might attain unto the resurrection of the dead. He tells us there in the context what difficulties he broke through, that he suffered the loss of all things, and was willingly made conformable even to Christ's death, though that was attended with such extreme torment and ignominy. He that is pressing into the kingdom of God commonly finds many things in the way that are against the grain, but he is not stopped by the cross that lies before him, but takes it up and carries it. Suppose there be something incumbent on him to do that is cross to his natural temper, and irksome to him on that account. Suppose something that he cannot do without suffering in his estate, or that he apprehends will look odd and strange in the eyes of others, and expose him to ridicule and reproach, or anything that will offend a neighbor and get his ill will, or something that will be very cross to his own carnal appetite. He will press through such difficulties. Everything that is found to be a weight that hinders him in running this race he casts from him, though it be a weight of gold or pearls. Yea, if it be a right hand or foot that offends him, he will cut them off, and will not stick at plucking out a right eye with his own hands. These things are insuperable difficulties to those who are not thoroughly engaged in seeking their salvation. They are stumbling blocks that they never get over. But it is not so with him that presses into the kingdom of God. Those things, before he was thoroughly roused from his security, about which he was wont to have long parleyings and disputings with his own conscience, employing carnal reason to invent arguments and pleas of excuse, he now sticks at no longer. He has done with the endless disputing and reasoning, and presses violently through all difficulties.